Also, my conversation with former FBI Director James Comey about Republican claims the Bureau has been weaponized against conservatives, and why he thinks the former president is an existential threat to the rule of law, in his words, and an even greater threat now than he was before. Former FBI Director James Comey speaks out tonight about Republican attacks on the Justice Department, as well as which of the many legal threats facing the former president he believes is the strongest. Top House Republicans, including House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, today threatened FBI Director Chris Wray with contempt proceedings. It's the latest in an ongoing fight for documents related to their investigation into the business dealings of President Biden's family, and part of a wider Republican attack on the Justice Department. The former president has called for Congress to, quote, defund the DOJ and FBI. Just last week, Florida governor and presidential candidate Ron DeSantis said that if he wins the White House, he'd fire Director Wray, quote, on day one. It's a fight my next guest knows very well. James Comey was fired 6 years ago this month as FBI director by the former president. Just before air, I spoke with him about all of this, plus his first foray into fiction, Central Park West, a crime novel. Congratulations on the new book.
Thank you so much.
Did you know you're a writer? Is that something you'd been interested in?
I'd always loved to write. I wrote in high school as a journalist, college as a journalist. Actually, the last piece of fiction I wrote before this was, I remember the date actually. It was the night I was writing in my room when a serial rapist and robber kicked in the front door of my parents' home. I was a senior in high school, and I was working on a piece for a literary magazine, and it was the last fiction piece I wrote before this. Well, nonfiction kicked in the door, literally.
Given the career you've had in the FBI, and when you see the former president, now the front runner again for the Republican nomination, how big a threat is that?
A very serious threat to the rule of law, almost an existential threat if he were to become president again. He's tried to take a flamethrower to the FBI, to the Department of Justice to stop them from investigating.
You believe Donald Trump is an existential threat to the rule of law in America?
I do, yes. I think were he to become president again, I don't think America has ever seen and is ready for what he would try and do to the system of justice.
So what happens if the Republican Party, which has a long, proud history, if many of its members are talking about, prosecuting the director of the FBI, defunding the FBI, or at least some of them are talking about defunding the FBI, what does that say about the Republican Party?
I don't know what the Republican Party is anymore, and I don't know what its future is. I think the American people need to hand it, especially at the presidential level, a series of losses until they figure out who they want to be, because they're not a party that's consistent with the values of the country.
In terms of the potential charges, potential cases that the former president is facing, which do you think is the strongest or has the greatest likelihood of actually moving forward and having an impact, an actual effect on him, charges?
Based on what I can see from the outside, which I know is an imperfect view, having been on the inside, the Mar-a-Lago documents case strikes me as the one that's the biggest threat to him.
Because it's so clear? I mean, because it's not getting inside his head? It's actual actions that are documented?
Yeah, it's a fairly narrow range of conduct. Right, it isn't thousands and thousands of people marching on the Capitol, for example, or a chaotic series of maneuvers after an election. It's focused, and it should be easier, not easy, given the nature of Donald Trump. I'm not sure he even knows his own mental process at times, but easier for a prosecutor to prove his mind, his state of mind, about that series of events.